Hello, and welcome to the Saintly Young Men podcast, a podcast for young men as we journey together on our path towards sainthood. I am your host, Gabriel, here with Michael and Raphael. How are we doing today?
Doing well, Gabriel. How are you?
I'm doing good. How about you, Raphael?
I'm doing good too.
So, today's topic is why are we Catholic men? I think we mentioned this briefly in episode 1, but today we're going to dive a little deeper into this because it's kind of the foundation of our podcast. I think we can really divide this into two sections. Why are we Catholic and why are we men? Two things that really go together well. So let's start with why are we Catholic? We mentioned this briefly in the last episode, but I'd like to just review it real quick. I remember a point we brushed on last episode was more why do we stay Catholic? Because each three of us has been raised Catholic, and so now it's our choices to stay Catholic as we're getting older. And I think a big part of that is, firstly just being raised, but then the sacraments, something that really sets us apart from other denominations of Christians and other religions for that matter. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, the sacraments are a big part in it. I mean, there are 7 sacraments as we are Catholics, and, well, you're baptized as a Catholic, you're confirmed as a Catholic, possibly, and it gives you kind of a sense of duty towards Catholicism, first of all. And in addition to that, I would say that it just makes sense. Like we mentioned in the first episode, there's nothing that doesn't make sense in Catholicism. There's an answer for just about everything. But what do you say, Michael?
Yeah, I would say duties is an interesting word to use because in a sense you are obligated as a Catholic to participate in the sacraments. But I think it goes beyond duty as well and into just it becomes your life, and it's not out of something that you have to do as much as it is something you want to do. It just becomes a part of who you are, and when you recognize the beauty of the sacraments, of the chanting, of the Eucharist, the Mass, it becomes very, very difficult to not want to participate and make Catholicism your life, because you recognize the beauty of it and how ancient the tradition is. And so I would say beyond duties, it also just becomes, who you are. You're a Catholic man. And at least for me, I want to be. It's beyond just an obligation.
Yeah. Well, it becomes a lifestyle,
Right.
It's kind of a more modern term, but it's,
Mm-hmm.
once you live a Catholic life, it becomes integrated, into your daily routine. If you're constantly praying, reading the gospel, going to Mass. But it's kind of like you said, a big reason you kind of stay Catholic is just because it makes too much sense. Everything is tied in together. Everything is perfectly explained. There's no holes in any of the doctrine.
Right.
So that's a big part of it for me.
Absolutely.
So I guess our next subtopic would be why are we men, or why are we masculine men? Nowadays, people tend to try to tear down this idea of masculinity. Just saying like you can be whoever you want to be, act however you want to act. And so I think it's important, as Catholics, to understand that we've been created a certain way by God, and that, when God creates something, you don't change it. God is perfect, and it says in the Bible, his creation was perfect. He saw it and it was perfect.
Hmm.
So what makes a man masculine?
Hmm. That's the question.
Question of the day.
So I think there's really two sides to this. There's the kind of the surface level, what we see in a person without really getting to know them. Do they look masculine? But then there's also, more importantly, the internal level, how they act when nobody else is around, how they think, which affects their surface level, really. So
Yep,
I
absolutely.
think it's important to first go into the internal level, because like I said, it affects what you think and what you do when nobody else is around. Is really going to affect how you look to other people. So there's a lot of different things in your mind that make you masculine. So one of them is like respect,
Yes.
respecting other people and trying to find the good in them, and honor. There's a lot of things. Tell me, what do you guys think?
Well, I have a quote here by the great Saint Francis de Sales, and he said, "Nothing is so strong as gentleness. Nothing is so gentle as real strength." And kind of our modern day version of masculinity is, dude who works out at the gym, drinks beer, curses, but there's another side, there's the proper side to manliness. And it's being that respectful, strong, gentle force of good.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's where it comes to be a true gentleman. We'll get into, also what the outside world thinks of what a gentleman versus just a man, and how that's skewed as well. But speaking about respect specifically, I think it's extremely important to respect each individual person, and just give due. One of the definitions of justice is to give due to one that is due, and all people are deserving of respect. Maybe not in the same way as maybe someone who is hostile towards you. But if you can remain respectful and remain in a state of grace and in a state of understanding, and just be willing to sacrifice your own your ego, basically, to be able to hold the door for someone, or carry one's groceries to the car. And these are surface level examples, but it's a very deep internal part of your character.
Yeah. Well, like we said, with a topic on why we're Catholic, we said, why do we stay Catholic? Because we're raised as Catholics. And I think you can kind of use that same example for masculinity. We're born men, and we're born to act like men. And we only change because of our outside world. Naturally, we grow into masculine men. Unless the world around us is full of like vice and sin and error, and then that's when we stray off from what is normal.
Right.
So I really do think that being like a masculine man is in our nature. It's what's normal, and it's generally what's easiest, because like I said, it's in your nature.
Absolutely.
But there's like you said, with respect, there's also fear of the Lord is a big part of being a true Catholic man. It's similar to respect. It's almost like a respect for God. It goes deeper than that, but it's similar in that sense, where you're acknowledging God in his power, basically. But having a certain sense of humility and fear of the Lord kind of puts you in your place and helps you understand, you're nothing compared to God, but you can still be a strong Catholic man.
Right. Yeah. I think those two virtues, humility and fear of the Lord, are really at a loss in today's society. You look at some of the great saints, Saint Francis of Assisi, Saint Joseph, the father of Jesus, they were humble and they had fear of the Lord. And it's just something that men lack these days is humility.
Well, especially in the definition of a man, most from a purely secular view, humility is not part of being a masculine man,
Right.
Yeah.
not part of this like machismo and stuff. It's, look at me, I'm the biggest, strongest man, I'm the best man. It's, humility is completely out the door. But I
Right.
agree. I think it's actually a big part of being a true man, accepting where you're wrong, accepting your faults, and being honest with yourself. It's very important, because if you're humble and you're honest with yourself, you can also it allows you to see your faults and see your sins and better yourself as a Catholic.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I've been learning lately is that even though there are all these goods around us, respect, honor, modesty, civility, humility, fear of the Lord, all of these goods, they have to be ordered, and they have to be ordered in a sense that there is a hierarchy. Some goods are better than others, and some are worth striving towards first and foremost, and before the other ones below it. And so a lot of people, I would say even a lot of Christians that I've seen put respect and honor ahead of fear of the Lord. And fear of the Lord in the purest sense is simply saying that you're fearful that that you are not God.
Yeah.
And that you are a servant first and foremost. And to put respect and honor before that is you're in a sense basically living out that you are better than you should think of yourself as. And and to put God, as sort of an extra, right? He's with you, but true fear of the Lord is having that humility of saying that, God, I am a sinner. I am a broken person. Heal me, wash away my sins, and to be able to say these prayers, it's at least some of the men that I've encountered, Catholic men I've encountered, sort of put this on the back burner and aren't willing to be humble enough and vulnerable enough to say these prayers, to pray these prayers.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think you're making a very important distinction, Michael, that the way a man orders his virtues is very different from the way a Catholic man orders his virtues.
Right.
So the other thing I mentioned was basically the surface level, how you look as a man, or how you act to other people as a man. And I think it's good to find a balance, because nowadays you kind of see two opposite ends. You see this idea of like machismo, where it's like the biggest man is the strong, the most masculine man is the strongest man, the man with the nicest cars, the man who drinks whiskey and cigarettes or whatever.
Yep.
And then on the other hand, you have all these people talking about, so-called toxic masculinity, where if you act like a man at all, you're scared and you have weak masculinity. And that, when you wear a dress as a man, you're just as masculine as anybody else. And I think it's good to find a balance between those, because masculinity definitely is not all about, who's the biggest, toughest man. But at the same time, when you follow true Catholic principles to be a Catholic
Mhm.
man, you're going to look and act like a man, how God made you,
Right.
in the nature of a man, like I mentioned before.
Hmm.
I was just going to add on to what you're saying about, you know, there are these two different sides, and
Hmm.
our job is not to conform to the world. Our job is to conform to God. And we have the Bible literally telling us how we're supposed to act, and even Christians will ignore that because they want to.
Hmm. Right. And I would also say that there must be a clear distinction between how God made man and woman differently.
Right.
We do have differences. It's the modern culture, even if you don't get into the um the transgender um culture and the unlimited spectrum of genders. And it's he made us very, very different, that we are supposed to live with each other, and when a man and a woman get married, they become one. But man is supposed to be the protector and the provider, and the not only that, but the comforter, the the one who brings up his children, who protects his spouse, and the woman, uh she is you know uh, a nurturer, and one who is more gentle and loving in a different way that the man is. And so we have these attributes that God inherently gifted to us, that we are different from women,
Yeah.
and we must be strong. We must lead like men. And these two different sides of the man who exploits money and power and fame and women, and on the opposite side, as you're saying, the one who's just really weak and soft, and sort of has feminine attributes. um it's really it's really Satan sort of twisting the good, and tainting it, and pushing it too far in one direction or the other, to bring us to a point that God did not intend. And we
Right.
can feel that, if you have the right mindset, you can feel how different, and how it goes against our nature.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, kind of like you said, man and woman, God created man and woman as unique
Mhm.
but complementary to each
Right.
other. They're both very different, but together, they both help each other. The way they're made and the way they're meant to act.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's important to act as we were made, because God made us a certain way with a certain design. And if we follow that, we're following God's plan. We're following what is right. But
Mhm.
the more we continue to act against our nature, and the more we continue to act against what's natural,
Mhm.
we're straying further from God's perfect creation.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think another virtue that needs to be mentioned is self-sacrifice.
Mhm.
Like, I've recently been reading about the story of the 8 Jesuit martyrs of the Canadian wilderness. So, around mid
Uh-huh.
1600s, uh, they went out into the American wilderness to evangelize, the Indians,
Mhm.
mainly the Hurons. And some of the stuff that those guys went through to follow what the Lord told them to do and to evangelize those Indians is just incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
one of these men spent years as a captive, being tortured almost daily. And yet he baptized hundreds of these Hurons. He converted many of them, all because he felt that the Lord was calling him to do it. That
Right.
is real
Yeah.
masculinity, real
Yeah.
self-sacrificing spirit.
Yeah, that's a very an excellent point. That that we are to, you know, the self-sacrifice is something that is not within our culture.
Yeah, not at all. Oh, so I was about to say, self-sacrifice is, yeah, it's not part of society's view of a man. In society's view of a man, it's like, yeah, the bigger man can drink as much alcohol as he wants, he can get as much money, as rich as he wants, he has everything he wants. But a true Catholic man is willing to offer things up, is willing to make sacrifices and put others before him.
Yeah,
Can,
our world
Indeed.
today is all about consumerism. You
Mhm.
know,
yeah,
I need more and more and more. But Catholicism is about not wanting more, giving away what you have instead of just taking.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Indeed.
All right. Well,
Excellent.
um, I think we covered most of what we want to.
Hmm.
I think that brings us to the saint of the day.
Yeah.
Um, Raphael, would you like to tell us more about that?
Yeah. So today's saint of the day is Saint Gerard Mahia. His feast day is October 16th, of course, and he's the patron saint of expectant mothers. Saint Gerard Mahila, he was born in 1726 in Muro, Italy, to a family of 7. He grew up in poverty with a great respect for the poor, and he was just 12 when his father passed away, and he was forced to grow up very quickly. He had to become a masculine man very quickly to help support his family. Shortly after his death, his mother sent him to live with his uncle to learn to become a tailor, just like his father was. And after a few years of working as a sewing apprentice, he took on a job with the local bishop of Lacedonia as a servant. Uh, he lived with the 3 vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, all, like we've been discussing, very masculine traits. He stayed close with the poor and worked very many different jobs. He served as a sacristan, a gardener, a porter, an informant, and a tailor. However, because of his great piety and his extraordinary wisdom, his gift for reading consciousness, he was permitted to counsel communities of religious women. He was often called on by the poor and the sick, and wherever his presence was demanded, he graciously presented himself. He was there to do the will of God. This humble servant of God also had facilities associated with certain mystics, including levitation, bilocation, and the ability to read souls. His chastity, obedience, and selfless service, as well as his ceaseless mortification for Christ, made him the perfect model of lay brothers. Throughout his years of life, several reported miracles to Mahila, including restoring a boy to life after he fell from a cliff, blessing a poor farmer's crops, ridding it of mice, blessing a poor family's supply of wheat, causing it to last until the next harvest, and he multiplied bread for the poor on several occasions. Along with his miracles effected through prayers for women in labor, Mahiwa's last recorded miracle is one that many credit towards becoming the patron of expecting mothers. Shortly before his death, Mahiwa encountered a young girl. He had dropped his handkerchief and she set out to return it, only to be told to keep it. Mahila told her she may need it someday. Years after Mahila's passing, the young girl became married and was with child. She unexpectedly went into labor and was on the verge of losing her child, and she called for Mahila's handkerchief to be applied to her. Almost immediately, her pain abated, and she proceeded to give birth to a healthy child, something very rare during that time. His prayers are typically sought for children, unborn children, women in childbirth, mothers, expectant mothers, motherhood, falsely accused people, good confession, lay brothers, and Muro Lucano, Italy. Even as Mahila became ill with tuberculosis, he only desired to live in God's will. His one last request was that a small place card be placed on the door stating, "Here the will of God is done, as God wills and as long as God wills." Mahila was told that the will of God wanted him to get better, and almost at once he became well. However, this only lasted for a month, and he quickly became very ill once again. And he died of disease on October 16th, 1755, at the age of 29, living the religious life for 6 years. The numerous miracles performed through Mira Mahiwa's prayers preceded his canonization shortly after his death. In 1893, Mahiwa was beatified by Pope Leo XIII, and on December 11th, 1904, Pope Pius X canonized the man of God.
Wow.
This
What a
is-
great story.
Yes, this is one of those saints where you look at his story and you can't help but be amazed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you sort of question, like, would I do the same?
Mm-hmm.
You know, would I be willing to go through that? And of course, we're called to different things and different vocations, but it sort of makes you question and just, you know, sit in awe of what God leads people to do and what people are willing to do. So
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
All right.
Definitely.
Excellent. Great podcast. Let's end in prayer. We'll pray the Our Father here. In the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. In the name of the
Amen.
Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen. Well, thank you for tuning in. Feel free to leave a like and submit a question by messaging us through our Instagram DMs at sym.catholic.podcast or email us at symcatholic.podcast@gmail.com. Goodbye for now, and Gloria Deus.